Our next speaker is Mr. Zahedul Amin, is the co-founder of Light Castle. I think he has a small presentation for us.
Thank you. We'll just do the presentation. Thank you, Sharif Bhai, and thank you to the BGMEA team for giving us the opportunity to present. Over the last few months, we have been working very closely with BGMEA for assessing the prospects and opportunities for setting up a marketplace, virtual marketplace, be it a B2B or a B2C platform. We have been able to talk to quite a number of different stakeholders over the last few months, starting with the manufacturers. If you could go to the next slide, please. Do I have a pointer? Anyone? Okay. Next slide, please. So we have been able to talk to a lot of different stakeholders, be it financial institutions, manufacturers, buying houses, buyers, logistics players, and quite a few other stakeholders in order to understand the current dynamics and where a digital solution can fit in. So if you look at the broader picture, I believe all of you are aware of how well the RMG sector has performed over the last 20 years, 20, 30 years. The sector has become the mainstay of our economy, generating 80% of our revenue. However, if you look at the per revenue earnings, we'll see that there is a downward dip. And this is data from Otexa, and we can see that the revenue per unit has been decreasing over the last few years, which is a matter of concern for most of the ecosystem players. Although we have grown, but the growth has predominantly come from our volume as opposed to our value. So which is one area of concern. Next slide, please. I've already shared some details. For the particular study, we actually looked at the feasibility of setting up a marketplace, a virtual marketplace, which can provide an alternative means for selling the product. Secondly, we also wanted to look at how local and foreign entities or the government policies would be in sync, or the financial institution would be synced with the alternate delivery channels. And we have found some very interesting insights. We have found some very interesting insights that we would be presenting, although we have been given 5 to 7 minutes to present our findings, but we would try our best to summarize some of our key points or key takeaways from our study. Next slide, please. If you look at the overall RMG sector, we'll see that there has been a systematic shift in terms of the manufacturing process. We started off with the traditional means of manufacturing where there was significant time for designing the product, delivery systems, and also for the delivery part. However, over the last 15, 20 years, we have seen fast fashion becoming a norm, whereby the lead time has significantly decreased, along with it the value and also the lead time, which have also led to faster delivery to the final retailers and finally to the consumers. However, over the last 10, 15 years, we have seen ultra-fast fashion due to the advent of social media, due to the advent of different platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and other platforms. And also, the role of influencers have also played a massive role in the change or the shift in the consumer dynamics. They are actually looking for mechanisms through which they would want to get something tomorrow from a store based on a certain design that they have seen being used by an influencer. And the real-time fashion entails actually understanding or harnessing data analytics or looking at social media analytics in order to find out what consumers might be looking for and then coming up with products which would cater to those needs. Next slide, please. As we know, fast fashion has become a norm. The lead time is decreasing. And as we know, consumers increasingly are buying more because these products are of lower value. Alongside, we have seen that they are wearing less of those clothes compared to the previous generations, which is leading to higher demand. However, the value per unit is on the lower side. As we know, due to 4IR, automation is happening. Automation will become a big force over the next 5, 7 years. And as we have seen, this would lead to increase in productivity and performance and reduction in lead time. But for a country like Bangladesh, which predominantly depends on cheap, inexpensive labor, this might not be a good outcome, considering the fact that automation would lead to nearshoring to some extent. And as Bangladesh, as we know, will have to find a way to expand this market, since this is a very critical sector for our country's growth and prosperity. So looking at alternative means for selling the product might be a viable option for for our players or our industry in general. Next slide, please. So looking at the B2B platform, of course, there are certain incentive mechanisms that should be in place in order for the buyers to be encouraged or for the producers to be encouraged as well. For buyers, quite obviously, a B2B platform would provide a very democratic approach to finding suppliers. They would have a selection of different manufacturers whom they can target on a real-time basis. Alongside, they would also have a linear way through which they can collate or they collate the order management system as well. Alongside, for the producers, business development would become more streamlined, particularly for the smaller and the medium-sized players who do not have reach or access with most of the buyers. And introduction of expansion of new market. As we know, there are new markets coming up, particularly in the Middle East, Asia as well. So a platform, B2B platform, might be a good mechanism for these players in general. Next slide, please. So what are some of the positives? One positive would be expansion of the market, finding out new markets where smaller, mid-sized orders can be made. Diversification would also be of importance, particularly given our focus on cotton-based products. So we actually need to move to more diverse materials. Alongside, we also need to find out or find out a mechanism through which the platform would facilitate the sharing of knowledge in terms of design and development. Some of the negative points that we found out based on our discussion was many of the existing buyers are entrenched with the same systems. They have existing relationship with many of the manufacturers, and it might require some incentive mechanism to attract them to this platform. And many of the manufacturers, particularly the mid-sized ones, are particularly not tech savvy, and they might not properly adopt this platform if this becomes this gets pushed along. And as we know, there would be some subscription because a business model is a prerequisite for sustaining this platform. A premium might be a barrier, and the platform might also will significantly impact other markets, or this might impact the relationship with the existing buyers as well. Next slide, please. If we look at the B2C platform, as we know, the B2C platform is slightly more complex in its ways. One thing is, if we look at the positive sides, we'll see that the industry would be able to directly reach to the consumers. Of course, we would need the brands. We would need the brands to develop in Bangladesh. We have only few brands which are currently operating, we need to scale them to the global market. We need to invest, or the industry needs to invest significantly, which would require significant time, and which might not happen overnight. However, there are certain models. For example, Shein is one example whereby Shein has been able to create a platform through which they have been able to harness real-time fast fashion, through which they look at potential design trends, and based on that they make their investment decisions in certain clothes. Next slide, please. So what are the positives? As we know, a direct entry to the consumers would lead to higher margins. The consumers would be able to access products maybe at a lower price, and there would be opportunities for diversification for the manufacturers who are currently operating in a retailer-based model. There are certain negative parts as well. As we know, building brands is not an easy decision. It takes years of investment, years of operations in order to create the brand which would be acceptable to the international Western buyers. And the EOQ is also quite critical, because smaller number of orders might not be sustainable for a lot of manufacturers. So scalability would be of critical importance, just to make sure that manufacturers are interested to take these orders. And there are certain policy level challenges. We have detailed them out in the publication that we would be, or the report that we have done, but we'll be sharing a bit more on certain policy level challenges. Next slide, please. As we know, there are certain challenges, particularly pertaining to EXP certification process. The process in general is quite manual, and this requires some overhauling in order to support B2B or B2C based sales. The return policy has to be initiated, which is currently not present, because B2C based buyers would definitely prefer the option to return their product if required. And international payment facilitation has to be instituted, which would enable or support international transaction at a B2C level. And the B2C level export incentives would have to be aligned in order to encourage manufacturers to pursue the B2C platform. Next slide, please. In the next 3 to 5 years, we believe that B2B based virtual marketplace might be a feasible one, considering the fact that we don't have significant or adequate number of brands which has the global cloud to sell in the international market. The focus would be on horizontal diversification, which would enable bigger variety of products. Currently, we have a finite or a small number of variety of products that we sell that has to be broadened to some extent. The building up of the Bangladesh brand has to be enhanced. We also need to find ways to broaden our branding efforts in general in order to be ready for international exposure in general. Next slide, please. Within the medium term in the medium term, we feel that preparedness for the P2C platform would be of critical importance. The focus should be on value addition, particularly by collaborating with the buyers, so as to ensure that we move across the higher valued items with higher margins. And alongside, we also want to focus on building Bangladesh as an attractive destination. As the other speakers have mentioned, the world is going through a transition, particularly due to the war-led deglobalization, and on the other side, due to the US-China trade war. Bangladesh has been a big beneficiary of this US-China trade war, and there is a good likelihood that Bangladesh might become an even more important player in the medium term, due to the fact that a lot of orders would definitely be moving from China to the other destinations like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and India. Next slide, please. In the long term, within the next 10 years or beyond the 10 years, we feel that a B2C marketplace might be a possibility. During this 10 years, we feel that number of brands would be coming up, Bangladeshi brands having regional cloud, Bangladeshi brands having brand recognition in the international market would be there, which might be catered through the B2C platform. And we believe that an alternative channel would hedge the bet for the sector, enabling them to directly gain significant value for the industry and also build the sector in a sustainable manner. So I'll close here, and I'll thank the BGMEA team for inviting us for presenting some of the key findings from our study. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Zahid bhai. Is this presentation available online, or if someone wants to have access?
We haven't. This is based on an interim version finding, so things are not publicly available.
Okay.
We are still working on the interim version. So we believe that the report should be available in a month's time, provided if BGMEA is willing to publish it.